Hello, everybody. We are live from the Microsoft MTC here in Malvern, Pennsylvania. I'm here with Andy Schwam. We've got Rich Ross behind the camera, and I am Chris Gomez here for the Dev Talk Show, our first one of September, and our first one, I think, pretty much after all the kids are finally back in school. So, we had an ending of summer, and everybody was busy, and here we are. Summer is over, and we are back. We were here tonight here at the Microsoft MTC for the Philly.net hands-on lab. We had Jason Van Brackle, a local expert on containers, works for Rancher, and he's the host of the Ranchcast, which you can find on YouTube, Twitch, and Mixer, just under that name. And he was here tonight to walk everybody through their first use of Kubernetes, a hands-on lab. And it was fantastic. It was great. So definitely you can check that out at the Philly.net archives. All of the meetups are recorded, and they're at Philly.dotnet, youtube.com. So
this is his second month in a row.
Yeah, second month in a row,
right.
Teaching us about. Last month it was Docker, and then this month hands-on with Kubernetes. So that was great. That was a fun time. So it was learning.
He's good.
Yeah, he's really good. He really knows. Really one of the local experts on Docker and container orchestration and how you can really put it to work. I think there's a lot that I'm learning about that. But speaking of learning, like what are you learning these days, Andy?
So interestingly, we joke around about writing code and not writing code. I've been writing code the last week or so.
Yes.
Yeah, I know, it's like
at
really
work,
cool.
write code.
Real work.
Oof,
Yes,
that's
actual
great.
Work. I have to admit that there are times when I have some trouble with remembering a keystroke to reformat things or whatever,
Yeah.
But I'm taking an old library that we wrote. It's funny how all this stuff sort of plays into other things we talk about here.
Yeah.
But I had a library that we wrote with some helper utilities that we use when we're starting a new application, and things like string utilities or so much stuff. There's actually a lot.
Like pretty standard common library.
Yeah, kind of common library.
But it was written and it's not like nobody knows how to use, or the tribal knowledge how to use it.
Well, the interesting thing is, though, what really actually kind of parlays into what we've been talking about, it's written for .NET Framework.
Oh, okay.
And, we were starting a new app in .NET Core.
Okay.
And I said, I really want to use this. So we're porting it to .NET Standard.
Right.
And I'm cleaning it up. I'm unit testing it, which is and my unit testing chops are really coming back. And at the same time, we want to document it.
Okay.
Because like you were starting to say, it's out there, but it's not obvious, what's in there and what you can use in there. So I did some research. This is new to me, building, how about that? A developer, and I'm not really that familiar with building documentation.
Yeah, who knew, right?
Shock, right? So I did a little research. I looked around at things. I was looking at Swagger and things like that, but I don't know if that was the right thing for me.
Yeah.
Because this isn't like a public API, like a HTTP type of API. This is DLLs that you're going to drop in with NuGet, so we're looking at DocFx. I looked into this, found this library. Microsoft uses it. They didn't write it. I think they borrowed it or resurrected it from the dead or something. I believe at one point it existed. I believe. Before Microsoft had it.
Okay.
So DocFx is pretty cool, and we can use it to. It does two things pretty well. One is it takes all those XML comments that you put. You've got a class, and you've got methods and properties, and if you start //
yes.
Boom, sort of starts to build out. It says summary, and then it.
What does it return?
Remark, right. What do you want to say
about it? Yeah.
So,
I have the DocFx website up here too while you're talking about it.
Yeah, so the downside is, of course, I got to go fill all those things in. I got to go and fill in all those comments.
Okay.
But if you do that and then you run this DocFx utility against it, it will generate a static website.
Okay, right.
And I like that it's this static website. And it's funny because, again, what did we talk about
last week about, or last time?
2 shows ago or last show? Static websites. So I'm like, wow, this all comes together. We talk about .NET Core. We talk about static websites on this show. So the two things.
Let's take a look while you're talking about it. We have the DocFx site up on my computer.
Yeah. Here we go.
So here it is. This is just their homepage, which they've used DocFx.
That's right. This is DocFx.
Right.
And so what you're looking at here, I believe, is there's pages and like articles.
Yeah.
And so what you can use is Markdown.
Right, you can use Markdown.
And it will convert this all into static HTML for you, right? And so what we're looking at here, those are all articles.
Yep.
Right? This is not auto-generated stuff. But this, to me, actually, this is the more useful, I think, if you have building a library like mine, and you want people to go there and read about like what it's good for. This is a great place to start.
Okay.
You know, you
can write the articles, but then at the same time, if you feed it your code,
right? Yeah, and this is right, and this is what it looks like.
Okay.
Now, I have to admit, I didn't love the look of it out of the box.
Right.
Okay. So then what I found is there's a few templates right here. Yep, you're right with me. There's a few templates, but not only that, you can pretty easily tweak these templates. So what I did is I started with I don't know. I picked one of them that I thought looked a little. I think I picked DocFx material. The one that's right there. I picked that, and then I'm starting to play around with how you can change these templates, and you can reorder things. So like I wanted the summary of my class to be bolder than the way it was. I kind of want that to stand out. And you know what? It talks about what your class references. Like if you scroll through these things, you'll see like, well, that's an endpoint.
This is just
a
fake API.
Yeah, right.
You know that they've got here, and these are, you know, in this article, I think some of this maybe is being generated, but then at the same time,
it's probably a combination.
Here are
the
different endpoints.
Yes.
And so the point was, I mean, like definitely, you know, here's one technology to build static websites.
And then what did I do with that static website? I took it and I deploy it as part of my pipeline. I deploy it out to Azure Storage.
Okay.
And we host it, and we showed that. We did show that, right? Like 2 shows ago. Like how did you? So boom, it's out there. It's a website. It's static, so it's super fast.
Yeah.
I think we should do a show on like maybe a little demos.
Yeah. This sounds like a future show here. Definitely.
I know it's documentation isn't everybody's favorite topic, right? It's like it's documentation, but you know I'm enterprise architect at my organization, right? If I can't make sure that we have good documentation, no one's gonna, right? Like, so you know, it's cool.
Well, and you know, and documentation has become so important even for Microsoft. The whole documentation initiative in the last several years, going from the legacy MSDN to docs.microsoft.com, which we can all contribute to.
Yeah.
And they just made an announcement, is that right, about recently anyways, something new being added to docs.microsoft.com, the samples.
Yes, so they have, let's see if I can bring this up here, or do you have that up on your screen?
Yeah, I'm looking at it now. The announcement blog post anyways. It was from the end of July, but you know, I'm not sure that I've seen this part of the docs site yet.
No, and that was part of the reason kind of brought this into the fold there, because I hadn't seen it there either. But there was some movement around where code samples were and retiring of some of the legacy places where we had put code samples in the past. And with a lot of the code samples sitting out on GitHub now, this is a way to have a common place to be able to sort through and filter essentially what's out there and look for all the various samples we have, whether it's something in Azure or something on .NET, or even some of the other different types of languages that are out there as well. Just looking at the screen that's coming across, it's a little garbled, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, I just went to the sample site and I filtered. So now I went from all the results, which, you know, there were tons of them, 1,400, and then I just said, well, let's what if I just say, well, what are the ASP.NET Core app service ones, and now there's a lot less, and I want to create a gRPC client. That's definitely a show coming up, I think, is looking at gRPC, and here it is. Here I am. I went right to it. So that's pretty cool. That's the docs.microsoft.com/samples gets you there.
Yes.
Just to be able to have a samples filter. And this is a samples filter through the documentation?
Yeah. So actually some of those links will take you either to like right out to a GitHub sample, or even I know the one I just clicked on here on my screen about a hello goodbye from Xamarin takes you out to a docs sample. So it describes the the project, some of the build requirements, and the various targets that are there. So a different way of different way of getting to it, and I'm sure there's a repo behind here that supports that too.
Yeah,
because you can browse the code out on. So I'm gonna bring my screen up.
Yeah, I was able to search very
you
easily
found it.
when you
Cool.
just said hello Xamarin, so I typed that in and I found it.
There you
very
go.
easy.
So yeah,
Hello,
there's the
Xamarin.
GitHub repo to browse the code, or just download the zip directly. So
That would be a good name for a show. If we were doing like a Xamarin show, Hello Xamarin, right?
I think we need to do one because
A Xamarin show.
Yeah.
I haven't done Xamarin in a while, so I'd like to, it's cool, right?
Mhm. Yeah, we did and maybe we can talk about it because we did a project, just a demo project in here where we took a Xamarin app, wired it up to talk to cognitive services.
Oh, sure.
So you take a picture of a product and then have cognitive services recognize that product, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, cool. And then, just the other day you showed me the bookmarking, which I've got working now, because I'm telling you, over the last couple weeks, I kept coming back to the same article again and again, to the point where I would type a few words of the title into the browser address bar just to find it again and again. And Rich said, you can bookmark now, and I hadn't even noticed this bookmark sitting here. I'm signed in to docs.microsoft.com.
Yeah, so I'm going to play a little devil's advocate, and then you can tell me, because this is actually kind of helps set up why this is valuable. Because I would say to you, you could have bookmarked it in your browser beforehand.
I could.
But there's some features that this is a little better, right?
Yeah.
There's some cool features that go along with this. So obviously, there's always bookmarks in the browser.
Right.
And that would have probably been.
So I'll admit that I stopped bookmarking in the browser ages ago because of the multiple devices thing.
Right.
But now then of course browsers are striking back with the sign in and sync features.
Yep.
But anyways, just bookmarking here in docs.microsoft.com. So I went ahead and I bookmarked
this idea.
article. If I go to my profile, because I'm logged in, of course, with the username I'm used to, so I've booked. We just happened to find, so I bookmark it. If I click on my profile, go to profile, it shows me some of the Learn modules that I'm working on. I didn't even realize, oh wow, I'm in the middle of these Learn modules. But if I go to bookmarks, oh yep, there it is. There's the article I've been referring to several times over the last couple of weeks, and the one that I just bookmarked. So here they are. Any machine, any browser. I sign in.
It ties it all together. That's what I think is really cool about this.
And I can even, and I didn't even realize that docs.microsoft.com had achievements, and oh my gosh, I don't have any.
How you doing? You're looking strong.
I don't have. That's crazy.
I also like your avatar.
Yeah, right. Now see, I'm gonna have to go. I'm gonna have to set up all. Look at now, I've got to set up all these things just because I'm gonna get made fun of over the lack of achievements and
I don't have
profile.
any.
I'm surprised I had nothing in there as well. So this is.
Well, we're not surprised you had nothing.
I use docs all the time, and I'm just sitting there going, really, I haven't accomplished anything in the achievement path.
So what do you have to do? You would have to take. Is that something you would have to take a test? I mean, do we know what the achievements are? Maybe it's making an improvement.
I believe those are tied to Learn. So
tied to Learn. So finish a course.
Microsoft.com. Yeah. So finishing some kind of a. Yeah, exactly. Some kind of a course or a project that's in there. So
I wonder, I'm throwing out something that we maybe don't know the answer to, but can you build agendas in there? Like one of the things we talk about at work is like, can a manager or a technical lead build an agenda that they want their team to follow? Like, some coursework or some articles to read. I wonder if there's a way to do something like that in there. That'd be neat.
That would be cool.
Some kind of learning path or
learning path. See, you always have the right words for the things. I mumble through these things. So.
Yeah, or I don't know what else to call it.
I mean, they have learning paths that like to learn how to build an application that does AI or machine learning. But as far as having someone direct you to do that, I don't know of anything. But
we're gonna have to take a closer look at Learn. So that's 3 shows that we've talked about in the last 10. 15 minutes here.
People say this, how do you come up with show ideas?
Well, I mean, just
watch the old show. Come up with some, now, the problem is one of us will have to go and do a little bit of research at least. So, we have some idea what we're talking about.
So this will be good. So we won't be scrambling around on a Sunday night saying what we're going to talk about on Wednesday.
We should be typing this into OneNote right now.
So a couple other quick news items. One came from Mixer. So Mixer has implemented a streamer review policy. It's really simple. If you're brand new to Mixer and you've never streamed before, they want you to watch a video. It's pretty short. I watched it. I don't think it was more than 10 minutes. And it basically goes over Mixer policies and just the open nature of the platform and how it's an inclusive, inviting community. And then everybody is required to wait 24 hours before starting your first stream. Now, current streamers were able to watch the video and keep going, because I found that that's all I had to do.
Yeah.
But it looks like it's kind of a waiting period for new streamers, which I think is an effort to maybe combat a tendency to create a fake account and do something. Sure.
People have let their emotions fly right off the bat, so it slows it down. But I love the fact that they're asking people to sort of commit to being inclusive. I mean, obviously we see that trend in a lot of places, in the workplace, in conferences, and on these platforms. I hear stories. It's just a shame when you hear about sort of bad things happen. People are mean to people or whatever. Let's all have fun together, right?
Yeah, it should be open and fun. So I think that's a good move. It's really nice to see.
Yeah, and there have been studies and things that show that when you are inclusive and have a diverse workforce, you build better software, you build better products. So it's the data supports it, as they say.
Here we are,
in addition to it being a good thing.
I'm not sure we're the most diverse, right? Three of us, as we're saying it.
Yeah.
We'll have to have some guests on.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Build some diversity.
I think as we get the hang on of it, we'll definitely get some guests. There's a lot of folks that I follow and respect and want to bring here, because I think they have some really neat ideas, and their voices that are new to me, they might be new to you. Yeah. So we definitely need to hear from them.
And it's funny you bring that up, because that's, I was talking to one of the other local user groups leaders, and the conversation kind of came around, well, how do we include other people or have a diverse audience, essentially, and be more inclusive around that? Because we look at the audience we had upstairs, you look at the audience in a lot of the other user groups, and they are a similar demographic for the most part. So it's something I think we all kind of struggle with, and we want to do something different to make sure that we do get different voices and different people coming in. And one of those things to kind of lend a hand and put different voices out there is something that I think we'll talk about later on. But we've got our 15 minutes of fame coming up again, so it's an opportunity if you've never spoken or you want to get in front of a group to try that out. So.
Right, yeah, and so we're getting the hang of working in the studio, and then I think some of the other features we want to bring in is being able to have remote calls, and then that will be a great way for us to do that. So we're getting there, and it's something that we're working on. And so please, any feedback from folks watching too, whether you're watching today or in the future. The last piece of news, which is probably the biggest piece of news today, released today, .NET Core 3 Preview 9. Rich Lander here announces it and says this is the last preview.
Wow.
Because in just a couple of weeks, September 23rd is the beginning of .NET Conf, and .NET Core 3 is launching at .NET Conf. 3 solid days of sessions, keynotes, and then sessions from around the world, around the community, in every time zone, and it's going to be fantastic. But here it is, .NET Core 3. I don't know how long we've been waiting for. In the future we'll get to write WinForms and WPF in .NET Core, and in the future we'll get to do Blazor. It's
actually originally it was we may never get to do some of those things, and then it was like, well, one day maybe we'll be able to do those things, and then it was like, yeah, we're going to do those things, and here we are. It's funny how I was also thinking like in some ways it came around fast. Like I remember just this spring thinking like, oh my gosh, it's going to be a while till it comes out, like in the fall. And then boom, summer goes fast. And .NET Core 3, I find myself surprisingly excited about this. Like, I don't mean surprisingly like it's not a great product, but I don't always get excited. It's another version of, it's hard. But this is cool.
Yeah.
.NET Core 3 is the real deal. Yeah.
Less than 3 weeks. So we'll definitely be talking a lot about what you can do with .NET Core 3 here. I mean, we did a little bit of Blazor already, and there's going to be so much to dig into.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's those were some of the news bits that we came up with for what's gone on just in the last couple weeks.
Yeah, there's always something,
and it's the end of summer, and yet still we found. I mean, that's when things usually slow down, but not here, right? And then after .NET Conf, I think we're getting ready to lead up to Ignite, so I'm sure a lot of other stuff will be happening.
Yeah. So. Of course, following Ignite is Tech Bash. So
yeah, then Tech Bash in November.
And of course, Code Camp.
Philly.NET Code Camp, October 18th and 19th.
Busy fall.
Yeah.
Busy fall. And so, from a work perspective on these things, right? We're going to stream from Tech Bash.
Yeah.
We're going to stream from Code Camp.
Absolutely. At
right?
least Probably the Saturday session.
And we haven't really talked about what we're going to do, right? Like last time there were some interviews and things like that. Have you guys talked about it? Because I don't know what you guys were thinking, honestly. But we'll at least stream the content from some Saturday content at Code Camp.
Yeah, right. I mean, I don't know if you, Chris.
We were able to do it last time, so I think we'll be able to get some interviews and talk to different speakers that you don't get to see on camera.
Yep.
And then depending on when our sessions are, because I know I have at least one. If Bill doesn't talk me into two, we'll see. So yeah, we'll and then just submitted to Tech Bash. So I'm hoping that we should have a pretty good.
We know
time
some
there.
people at Tech Bash,
yeah.
So I think we can.
It should be pretty good. There's a lot that speakers at Tech Bash. I was looking through the list. It's just astounding. Yeah. Folks that and I think we can talk about this when we get to the end of the show, but there are some folks that I learned key concepts from that I'm going to get to meet the first time there. I'm really excited about that.
That is pretty cool.
So
yeah, I love when we can get people, and we've had some experience with this through the MVP program. I meet people and stuff like that, but it's really interesting when you're sitting down and you're hanging out with a group of people and you realize this person was blogging like 10 years ago when I learned this.
Right. Yep.
And I say to them, I'm like, you're part of the reason I'm sitting here. Like, thank you. And their dedication over the years, some people, it's amazing, right? But we can come back to that another time.
Yeah, so one thing we wanted to talk about today is that recently we've been working a little bit with Azure Active Directory.
Yeah.
And the reason for that was because we're building a web application. It's the Dev Talk Show website. And while it's not, I think, on our short-term roadmap, someday we might want folks to log into it. And I've formed an opinion after fighting battles for several years that get authentication and authorization baked into your site early. Because if you build your site that it just runs totally anonymously and your team is cranking and you're putting features in there and you're getting stuff working, and then you try to go back and get it so that only certain roles can reach this page and only certain users can reach this page, and by the way, people who aren't even in the company shouldn't reach it at all.
Right.
That can be hard to do later. So I wanted to take a look.
Is that a recurring theme, by the way? How often do we say that? Don't wait.
Right away.
Yeah. DevOps, logging,
right. DevOps, logging,
security. So many of these things, right? And these are best practices. These are the things we've learned at this stage. We've been doing this a while.
Authentication's one of them, and so this will eventually apply to the Dev Talk Show. But it turns out that on Azure you can have an Azure Active Directory. It can be one that you create just out of scratch of the portal, which is what you're going to see me doing today. But it also might be maybe where you work has had an Active Directory server on-prem forever.
Yep.
You may not even know it. They may have already gone to Azure Active Directory behind the scenes just to reduce the complexity and costs. Because and I don't know how this works, but apparently it's very easy to go hybrid with this. Yeah. Don't change anything. Just now you're doing your Azure. Now you're doing Azure Active Directory instead of on-prem. Apparently, it's very easy and can be done seamlessly, and your employees don't even know. So
you can. There's a Azure AD Connect that will let you basically connect your on-premises domain and push that information up to the cloud. And then there's various options around that, whether your hash password stays up there or does it synchronize, how it synchronizes back on-prem. There are all kinds of those options that you can do. But what's really cool, though, is that once you have that there, and this is kind of where the conversation with Chris and I was going, because I was doing something similar, not for a website, but for actually to authenticate a bot so that you could use it for internal processes. So in the latest version of the framework, so in version 4, they actually put a certain dialogue in there to have that functionality natively instead of, there used to be a couple of different new GitHub repos that you could push in there. But the idea being I could use authentication and have a secure communication with backend services just using a bot through whatever channel it was.
So by creating that Active Directory, I think I've got some experience from work where we use that Connect, I believe, and we synchronize our Active Directory. And so on our Azure apps, we use we create apps. And some of the naming gets a little weird because I create an Azure app, a web app.
Right.
But in an Active Directory, I create an app to represent it, right?
Right.
And you can't do that without having an Active Directory instance, or can you still do that?
So you don't need an on-premises.
No, I don't mean that. But you can't, like my personal subscription to Azure.
Mhm.
I don't have Active Directory set up.
Okay.
I assume, unless it comes like out of the box.
So your subscription has to be bound to some tenant.
Yeah,
My
it turns out
personal
you
one?
get one. You get
So
one.
I do have one.
What
Okay.
I found out as
This
part
is-
of this,
yeah.
which we're going to see in a little bit, is you get one whether you knew it or not, just
Yeah.
by signing
Okay.
up to Azure.
So I do have one.
It's-
All right, got
So
it. Okay.
Yeah.
at least I'm pretty sure that's right.
So I'm really curious to see this
Yeah.
perspective because at work we
Yeah.
just sync.
Yep.
And I've been wondering actually for a while. And
How does
this
it
is not
work?
rehearsed
Yeah.
because
No.
we hadn't talked about this
No.
demo at all. But I'm excited.
And this is pretty basic, but where I started off is exactly where I was saying earlier, and now I have the page bookmarked because I came back to it over and over.
Yeah.
This whole theme used to be called Azure Active Directory for Developers, but now it's the Microsoft Identity Platform. So, which makes sense because it's about more than just Active Directory. This is about your authentication and authorization. And what I like about this is it does it in a way that will be very familiar to .NET developers. So what I love about this page is I love that looking at it, it's almost got this choose your own adventure feel of if you want to learn a little bit about the identity platform, then certainly you can start just simply by by concentrating on the about identity platform on the left. But what if what I wanted to do was say I want to build a web app that signs in users?
Yep.
Well, how do I get started? Well, gosh, there's a quick start that gets you going. And then what's even cooler is you're going to see in just a second that the quick start is built into the Azure portal. It's awesome. So here's my Azure portal. And
You have mask set up, by the way, just to remind you.
yeah. So Azure Mask is going, which should block most things, but also
making sure.
yeah. Go ahead.
You're probably going to same place I was going with the question, but which browser are you using to do that?
How did I do that just now? So I didn't use a browser there in this particular case, and I can do it real quick. This time I used the snip feature. I didn't. I could use Edge
you weren't
later
using
to
Edge,
draw
okay,
right
yeah.
on the
questions,
screen.
Yeah. So that was one thing I was going to go back to at some point, but with the AZ map. So go ahead, finish with the
Oh
snippet.
yeah. So I mean, if what we've been kind of talking about doing this for a while is instead of doing this swirly with a mouse.
Yeah.
What if I and I know it's real quick and it's not perfectly seamless. If I quickly take a full screen snip, now I can draw here and
But you can use Edge
and I
also,
can say,
right? You could have just opened to
yeah.
Edge.
I could have, sure.
Yeah, there's
Right.
the
I
ellipse
could've.
feature. Actually,
It's the pen feature on Edge, like at the
Yep.
top.
yeah.
Yeah.
And we were playing with that because these are the kind of things that we want to get better at. I think it makes for a better presentation.
Yeah, so there's
So,
the pen in
yeah.
Edge, and now I'm in Edge, and I can say like, oh look, I recently searched for .NET Core Runtime.
Yeah.
So it's pretty cool.
And it'll save those.
No doubt about it.
Yep.
Yeah, I
and
can
it'll save
it, and then when I
those,
come
which is
back,
nice,
it'll be
right,
there.
yeah.
We will probably be using that in the future. But real quick, I thought like,
Yeah.
hey, let's take a look at. So in the Azure portal, I have a couple Azure Active Directories, and we were talking about this earlier. That no matter what, I had this one, and even the free directory is fine. The free directory is perfectly fine.
So, sorry, if you don't mind, what do you mean the free directory?
So there's different SKUs for Azure Active Directory. There's free, and then there's some paid SKUs.
Okay.
Like there's a premium SKU. And for our purposes today, I actually don't know what I would pay for in the premium SKU that I need today.
But
I
you
just
can-
don't know.
So my next question is, it sounds like you're saying I can have more than one Active
Yes.
Directory?
Yeah.
That sounds like strange. I mean, there must be one tenant Active Directory, right?
Well, I can have multiple Azure Active Directories in my subscription.
Yeah.
So because Azure is just a big cloud, and in my subscription, I've got one. Now, I believe that you could even configure authentication to go across tenants if you wanted. Not what we're doing today.
not what we're doing
This is
today, yeah.
really simple today. So I'm not using this one.
Yeah, so I guess in some of the ways that we talked about it kind of leading up to this, where I have, authenticating in what's Azure AD, which is, kind of where a lot of the work accounts and school accounts are,
Yes.
and Azure AD B2C,
Right.
which gives you the ability to have an Azure AD instance that uses things like Microsoft accounts, Google accounts, Facebook accounts
Right.
as authentication identity providers, basically. And then that shifts the management of those accounts, the password resets, I'm locked out of my account, those things over to those platforms because they have ways of doing it, and you don't have to worry about that in your domain. So.
Yep. So what I did is I didn't want to kind of muddy the waters of the Active Directory that came with my account. So I said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to create a new one, just like you said earlier, like really another one. And it's super easy. When I said new resource, I started just typing like Active Directory, and there it is, Active Directory. Right. And I can say create, and you get asked a couple questions, and then it goes off to create it. Now this takes a little while. Okay. So and by a little while I mean they predict a minute, but it ended up being less than a minute. But just in case it takes a little longer, I took some screenshots of this.
Look at you! This is like a professional presentation here.
I just said to myself, you know what? With my luck,
PowerPoint. We're using PowerPoint now.
With my luck, this will be the day when.
I thought this was a dead show. We don't do PowerPoint.
Yeah, we're doing PowerPoint.
Well, this will be the day when it takes 5 minutes or something. See how it says down there? Directory creation will take about 1 minute. I just wanted to be sure. Well, I wouldn't know of a situation where somebody got stuck on a stream, waiting several minutes for Azure or any cloud service to spin something up.
Yeah, that's kind of awful when that happens.
I'm sure, but you know what? Not the first time it's happened to anyone.
No, definitely.
So in any case, the first thing you're asked is to create a directory. Now the organization name I think is kind of a friendly name, but that domain name does have to be unique because everybody ends up living under the onmicrosoft.com that's the domain, and then you get a subdomain under there. So I just went demo test 86667, and this says this is.
So would a user login then be like Andy at demotest867.onmicrosoft?
Could be, but it gets better.
Okay.
So it's the directory is being created. That's all you're seeing there, and then you get this new page that represents your Active Directory. And if I shift back real quick, we can actually look at it. So here it is. This is an Azure Active Directory, a demo. It looks like somehow did I lose? Okay, I think
you switch screens.
I think what happened here is PowerPoint's getting in the way there.
When you're in presentation mode, it gets really messy.
It's weird.
I can't fix that.
Yeah, I gotta figure that. Yeah. So, anyways, this is now live. This is my Azure Active Directory, and I can do all kinds of things. Not that you would do this in real life from the portal, but when you're learning, you can create users and groups and relationships and roles. You would, come on, in a real organization, you're going to have to automate this. But let's go ahead and head back real quick and take a look. There's a feature called custom domain names.
Okay.
And in custom domain names, you are actually you have the ability to take a domain name you own and that you can modify the DNS for and say, I want to use this with my Azure Active Directory. So I happen to own this domain name.
This is a free tier.
This is all free still. Directory. Everything I've done is free so far. Gosh. Except for the fact, here's what I did pay for. I paid for this domain name a few years ago.
You got to pay for something, right?
But Microsoft's not benefiting from that. In this case, I'm just happen to be using a different registrar.
Yeah.
Okay.
Still unverified.
So I went, in the screenshot. I went and I said, I own codingsummit.com. Sure. I want this Active Directory to represent itself as codingsummit.com. So you go ahead and all you do is you click Add Custom Domain, and you put it in there.
Yep.
And then it says, it's unverified.
Yeah.
Well, that's because what you have to do is you have to...
like a text record or something?
You have to create a text record, and all the information's in there. I didn't bother screenshotting it. It basically says, create a text record with this information. Yeah. And then Microsoft looks at it and says, yep, you matched up the secret number or whatever we gave you. So now we know you own it.
And the screenshot with that, if you had a screenshot... Everyone's domain hosting website is different anyway, look different, right?
Yeah.
So,
and I felt like it wasn't that
it's
big
pretty
a deal.
straightforward, easy stuff.
So then, once I did that, I clicked on New User.
Yeah.
And I created, this was your question, I created a demo user, and that's their username. It's not the onmicrosoft.com stuff, which I could click and make one of those too. Mm-hmm. It would be demo user 867 at onmicrosoft.com. But this is probably what we want.
Now, maybe this is being dumb here, but demo user, is that a thing, or is that something you called a demo user? Like
I
first
named
name.
The user
I wasn't sure if there was a feature for
and I even
I've seen
uploaded
some tools
that picture.
where you can it gives you random users, and it's not that. Okay.
Yep, I made that user. I called it demo, first name demo, last name user, and then I even threw a picture in there. Just
it makes it real.
Just to make it
that's
feel
neat.
kind of real. And it even tells you the source of it is Azure Active Directory.
Wow.
Now, we're not showing this today, but if you wanted to, and I think in a future show, we will talk about the pros and cons of doing this. If I click on new guest user, I can give it a Microsoft account email address, and it will invite that person to this organization.
Only Microsoft accounts.
I
don't
know for sure about that.
No, so what's really cool, so we talked about Azure AD.
Yeah.
And we talked about Azure AD B2C.
Yeah.
Right.
Your organization, where you work, Andy, where you work, Chris, and where I work, we all have Azure AD instances. We could invite, let's say, for your company into our account as a guest user, and that's called Azure AD B2B, business to business.
B2B.
Okay.
So you have because we're all in Azure AD tenants, we're able to see each other and essentially share information with each other that way.
Could that be like a contractor's coming in to do some work? I mean, there's a lot of reasons, right?
There's a lot of reasons, yeah. And what did we used to do in the past? We used to add them to our Azure Active Directory.
Right.
Somebody had to go in there and I've had this happen where they set the account to expire in 90 days. And then if nobody comes back and says something about it, it goes away. Or if the person's still there, now you've got to go through on that day the person expires and needs to get work done, go find out who has the keys to make that change. This gets us around that because it's your company's Azure AD.
Yeah.
If you leave your company, that account goes away. So when you go to authenticate, you're authenticating against your credentials, not my tenant, even though you're seeing
Oh, really? So you're authenticating back. So let me just say this again. So I come to Chris's office to do some work. Okay. He invites me as a guest user.
Yep.
Okay. And then
you get fired.
I get fired. That's exactly what I get fired. So, when even the first day when I log in, I'm not logging in really to his company. I'm logging into my company, but you've sort of certified that I'm allowed to come through.
It sounds a lot like the federated auth.
Yeah, it's kind of like
federated auth, except it's all Azure AD. That's B2B.
Yeah.
B2B.
Okay.
So I think of all these use cases for some of these things.
What's important here, and I don't want to dwell too much on it, except that let's just say you want to have some fun with this, and you say to yourself, I'm tired of creating. I'm tired of creating these new users over and over and over. Just because I wanted to try it out, I did click on new guest user. I gave it a Microsoft account, and over here under source it said Microsoft account. And what would happen is I could then authenticate, but using the Microsoft account credentials, so they weren't even managed by this.
Wow.
Now, I had a conversation with Rich later, and we kind of thought like, we'll talk about B2C on another episode.
It almost sounds like a version of B2C but it's not really
doesn't
the true
feel
thing.
Quite right.
Yeah.
But I could click on new user over and over. I could add you, and then but you would have an Andy Schwam at codingsummit.com address, and so
I'd
on.
like to. That'd be great.
But in any case, so moving on. Right. In fact, let me head back over. So what's next? And you said this. So I've got users in the directory. Okay, I've got users in the directory. No big deal. But if I'm going to sign people in, I need an app registration. And you said that.
Yeah.
And so in app registrations, you click on app registrations and you get this screen that says, well, hey, you don't have any right now. And so you go ahead and click on new registration. And what you do here is you give it a friendly name that's going to actually be shown to users, because we've all seen this box before that says this app, demo test Azure AD test, wants to view your profile in Azure AD, and it wants to be able to authenticate you.
Right.
In fact, those were the only permissions that were asked for. It wasn't something crazy like it also needs your blood type and stuff like that. None of that was there. I have the ability to say, do I want to this application, can it only be accessed by this particular tenant? And that is all I wanted in this case. If I really wanted to, I could say that any Azure AD directory and even personal accounts, so like somebody from Xbox or Skype, it looks pretty powerful. The other feature that you have to supply it with is what's called the redirect URI, which is when the authentication response, after we authenticate somebody, we want to return that response to some location that's probably going to be your web server. When you're developing, you might set localhost here just to get things going, but then for actual day-to-day use, it's going to be a real live web server, right? So what I thought was really interesting is after your app registration is complete, right here sitting in the overview section, it's begging to help you.
Yeah.
It's saying, hey, here's all the documentation you need. And by the way, you want to get started real quick? We're in the portal. You want to get started real quick? Okay. Well, why don't you pick a language or an app or a framework that you're using? Are you in JavaScript? Are you on Android? Are you on iOS? I said, you know what? Just because ASP.NET Core is obviously the hot new thing, but I don't want people to think that this is only supported by new stuff. So let's look at ASP.NET. In this case, it's MVC, ASP.NET on .NET Framework, MVC. And they give you this quick start. And you can scroll down this quick start. And what's even cooler is where it says there with a green check mark, your application is configured correctly. When you start off, and if you haven't put that reply URL in, there's a button there that says, hold on, we'll go configure the AD for you to make the quick start work.
And like they tell you the real thing.
And they'll go
you might
fix
need
the
more
portal.
information or you might not.
Now, this quick start does a couple things that you might not want to do in production, but again, this is a 5-minute quick start. I'm not going to scroll down any further because it does start to get to some secrets now.
Okay.
There are secrets.
We can pull out of the.
There's nothing to pull off.
Probably blocked because I noticed Azure Mask is working,
that was not blocked. I
No,
checked
certain
earlier.
parts it won't catch everything.
Okay.
So from that quick start page, after you've configured your app, it brings up a button that says download a working solution.
Nice.
And this is the solution here.
Wow.
So they're like, here's some code, here's an MVC app, it's ready to go, and this is perfectly safe. You then take the two secrets, the client ID and the tenant, and you enter these secrets here in the web config for the purposes of the quick start. Now, I don't have the real secrets here.
Okay.
But you put those in, this app starts working. And I think, in a little bit we'll talk about, I think, what you really want to do with this, because I think a lot of people might just put these secrets in and then they, hey, I'm done. But let's watch this thing work. Although I'll give you all one more piece of advice. Make sure you read the whole quick start completely, because there's a little piece in there that's very easy to read over that for whatever reason, the solution that they give you, you've got to go update the Roslyn compiler. It's a NuGet package update. They even give you the command to do it in the package manager console. It's all there in the quick start. I'm just not going to scroll down because it'll reveal the client ID and the tenant ID. And I'm going to delete this directory anyway later. But we'll get in the habit of protecting our own secrets here. Mm-hmm. If you don't follow that one little tidbit, then your application's going to blow up. And it looks just like that.
So is it possible that happened?
It happened to me. Yeah.
Exactly.
Whoops, I didn't read that.
Just skimming through, thinking,
this quick start's terrible. Why didn't it work? Oh, whoops, I didn't read the bullet point.
Right.
Okay.
We do it so you don't have to.
Yeah, so I did. So don't. And I always do say that to people. If I lose time on something, I put that into my presentation and say, I don't want you to lose half an hour on this.
Yep.
So here we are now back in the working app, and you already saw how the web config works. This is the rest of the code. This app works, by the way. I'm going to go ahead and let this start up while we look at the code. So what does this look like? Of course, it's going to start up very quickly.
Yeah, that was quick.
But what they give you is they give you a home controller and a claims controller, so you can go to a page and view the claims.
Yep.
But we'll be able to take a look at the code pretty quickly. If you're familiar with ASP.NET Core, things like a startup class and this whole concept of use cookie authentication that's probably really familiar to you. And you may not remember that back in .NET Framework, there was a middleware standard called OWIN, the Open Web Interface. Open Web
Interface.
I think it
might just be interface.
It might have just been Open Web. Okay, I'm going to give up on that.
looking
Was it just
like-
Open Web Interface?
Yep.
And the N is part of interface? Wow.
Open Web Interface for .NET.
For
Open
.NET.
Web
Open Web
Interface
Interface
for
for .NET.
.NET. Yep.
So you can tell some inspiration here came from other environments where you set your server up in a layered approach. And this eventually became very standard and part of .NET Core. So if you're back in ASP.NET MVC on .NET Framework, you will be using OWIN. This code comes with the sample. You might stare at it the first time and say, I'm not really sure what this is doing, but it works.
Right.
And you can go find out later. You're going to have to learn about OAuth. You're going to have to learn about scopes.
So we don't just use it, even though we don't understand it? I mean,
you could use this, but there's some things that I kind of think like you probably don't want to go to production with, but it's pretty good.
No, I mean,
it's pretty good.
Kind of kidding around.
I know you are.
People need to.
But it's important.
Sometimes it's good for people to
dive in a little bit, right?
Dive in a little bit. I want to encourage people to say, let's not. Oh, it works. So it's good enough.
Ship it.
Right?
Let's just start building. Let's just start building on the
Understand the
sample.
limitations and the pros and cons of the. It's so easy nowadays for people to grab a sample from GitHub, or grab a sample. And Microsoft, I'm sure their samples are good, but it's not about the quality of the sample. It's about how are you going to troubleshoot that. And so I just want to make that statement.
So let me come off the screen for just a second because I do have to copy one thing.
All right. This is pretty good. This is pretty easy. There's a lot of other features to these apps, right? You can configure all kinds of permissions against the Graph API and all kinds of different things that I've seen. We're starting to do some of that stuff for at work for me.
Yeah, absolutely. So once you're in that space, especially if you're using some of the other services that are there. So Azure, Office 365 or Dynamics or other things in Azure, those services can get lit up and have authentication on top of them.
Yeah.
So.
And I don't know if you've got this far yet, but have you seen the way it ties into the to secrets and Key Vault? And like all this stuff ties together really nicely. That you've got Active Directory and Key Vault.
Yeah, that managed identity essentially.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I think we're back. I think we're ready. It's and so
look at the magic. Rich behind the console just makes us all.
Yeah, I tried to get everything ready, and then I said like, wait a second, I have one more secret, and it's this user's password. So a user comes here, that demo user that I want my app to be able to authenticate. Microsoft services do this for me. I don't write this code.
Right.
And it ships it off, and it says demo user at codingsummit.com. That's the custom domain. This is the user I created. That user has a password, so I need to enter it here. And they're going to get, do I want to stay signed in? Sure, let's stay signed in. And now I'm authenticated.
Yeah.
It knows who I am. It knows that I'm demo user. And the claims controller just goes to a simple view that shows me all those claims about that user, and I could sign out, and there it goes, and it even kind of tells you, hey, you should probably close your browser, but here I am, and I can sign in again. It's pretty
easy.
It's pretty impressive that this just came out of this code, and so if you but
you didn't have to create a database,
no?
Right?
And I'm not going to own that. That's going to be an Azure Active Directory.
Right.
Yeah, and if you're familiar with MVC. And you've done things like used the authorize attribute. What I love about this is all super familiar to you. Set an authorize attribute on the claims controller. If I tried to go directly to that claims URL, it would have stopped me, made me log in first, and then look at, I want the user claims. Take them right out of the user identity principle, the standard by the book way to do things. Nothing fancy, nothing strange.
So where are the claims? Because you mentioned claims before. And we know that claims are, I think, somewhat a fancy way to say what permissions do you have, what groups are you in. It could be a lot of things. Claims could even be first name, last name. Yep. Claims are just attributes, really, I guess.
Yep.
But what mechanism do we have in Azure AD? Like, have you looked at storing role-based claims?
Yeah, right. So I haven't done that yet, but what I think you can do, and this is where I think we can go in the future, is that Azure AD is going to give you a specific set of claims about that user in AD.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's two things you can do. I believe that, number one, like any Active Directory, you can add more information.
Yeah.
But second, sometimes your IT people will say to you, I don't want that information in AD. Who knows what it is? It's something
maybe muddies it up when you have hundreds of applications.
It's something that's very custom to your app.
Right.
You're a person who can sign checks. They're like, it doesn't belong in AD. Really? It's not even a group? No, not even a group. So one of the things that you get to do in the identity system, I think there's a step where you can supply your own custom code to basically say, okay, well, now I know who this user is. Let me go look up in my data store some additional information, add more claims, and then you're still using the standard MVC, because claims.
Well, you certainly can do that. Right? I mean, there's been ways to do that for a long time in ASP.NET. In your global ASAX file, you would do like on authenticated, and I would use one system for authentication. Then I would take go look up in some table,
right,
or whatever it is,
because you want to set a role,
and then load those things into your claims identity, claims principal. I always mix up the two claims, right? And then it all is baked in because it's in that principal, and then you get that like authorize, and you can say role, right? And so, but you think there might even be a way to, I don't know if there's like some magic code that ties them together or something like that. That'd be kind of neat.
Yeah, I didn't continue further. I know that in the past I've done things like in .NET Framework and ASP.NET, role-based security was the norm.
Yep.
RBAC.
But yet, you know,
is that not RBAC? Role-based access? Is that different than role-based security?
No, I think you're right. Role-based access control was the term.
Oh, okay. Well, that's the term we do for Azure.
That was the term from the old days.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
And I say old days because now the frameworks aren't going to change. The frameworks, ASP.NET MVC is still going to have the authorized role stuff. So you might say to yourself, but wait a second, you're using it's MVC. What you're using claims. Well, it turns out that a role is just a claim.
Right.
And if you set a certain claim, then MVC picks it up as a role automatically. I have done that before.
Well, there are claim types.
Yeah. Right.
I think that's what you need to do. You need to say this is a claim type.
Yep. And it meets a certain, there's some URL that acts as its role. And so, I mean, that's all stuff that I think we could demonstrate as we go forward. But what I thought was so impressive was that they even hand you the solution that says, here it is. We'll pull out their first name, last name, and we'll fill, we'll use a view, and you've got a working website.
Yeah.
So there you go. The only things that I think I came up with, Rich, when we looked at this, is I said, I'm not really a big fan of putting that client ID and tenant ID, which to me are secrets. I'm not a big fan of those being in the web config because that means they're going to get checked in the source control.
Inevitably.
Yeah.
So,
I'm looking at trying to learn about, as a side note here, another topic, DevSecOps.
Yeah.
Right? How to build something into my pipeline that says, hey, that looks like a secret. Don't allow that user to check that code in.
Yeah.
And I know that stuff exists, but I'm really, that's one of those, like, that's on my checklist, my to-do list for like, I would like to learn that.
So I think in the future we'll demonstrate, we'll try out using like maybe putting secrets in Key Vault.
Yeah.
Or you could even say, hey, the secrets are in environment, so they're not in source code. But as you are deploying out to whether it's Azure App Service or whether it's Kubernetes service or anything, let's go add a couple environment variables. That would be like simulating they're getting injected by some other process that's tightly controlled at your place of work or in your organization. It's a tightly controlled process, only it's a need to know. Who needs to know the secrets? Hopefully nobody, because it's all automated. And developers don't check anything in, which to me is the key.
Oh,
so everybody get to that place where you're not putting things that like, hey, this isn't source code. Source code gets copied.
And you can't get it back out. Once it's checked in, it's in the history.
I know people say things like, oh, but maybe our source control, look, our source control's on our internal network. It is. And guess what? It's also in text files on all of these machines that get picked up, they get taken home and left in car trunks and stolen.
Not in my company.
No,
we don't actually do that. We don't. No, I don't even mean like that.
Okay.
We use VMs for things like that. So
I see what you're saying.
There's ways to, but you're right. I mean, the point you make is a good one. It's like that's why they keep coming up with better places to put this stuff.
Right.
So you know what I'm thinking? I got to break one of my habits.
Okay.
All right. So, you were showing that great example about the documentation that's built right into the Azure portal, right? And I've sort of built up this thick skin, this habit of like ignoring noise around, and just like focusing on the menu, right? And there's all that text in there, and I'm not even noticing that those are demos, right? And I think a lot of us are like that. It's like we're not looking at that. We got to start to like open up and say, oh, let me look around and see what else is here, because if I just, that content is great content.
Yeah.
I didn't even, you don't always realize
in the portal.
Right there.
I said because I was all and the original page that I had bookmarked, it really is pulling that content from there. I found, and I don't know how it's actually pulling it. I don't know if it makes a copy or who cares, but that documentation is fantastic on all this stuff. We did one walkthrough of signing in people into your web app, but oh yeah, you want to do it in the, it's just in time documentation. You just created an app registration. You're probably wondering how to use it.
Exactly. I love the fact that they tie in some knowledge of your situation, like yes, you are configured correctly, or no,
you need to you need to.
That's pretty slick.
You need to configure.
And you know what? It's funny because we say like that's slick, and I'm thinking to myself like, wow, whoever thought of that, it's a great idea. Like, and then you stop and think, why didn't we ever think about it? Like,
why aren't we doing
now
this?
It seems so obvious. Like, why didn't we do that beforehand?
I know. Why doesn't, even as we begin to move forward with our website, it makes you think about things like, hey, I want people that see my GitHub repos to be able to click one button and have their own copy, and it's running in the cloud, and it just works, and there's a lot of GitHub repos that do that today.
Right.
They're right from the README, you can deploy to a cloud, deploy to Azure button. So I think it's pretty cool because it encourages the learner who maybe takes one look at your README and says, I've done this many times. I take a look at the README and I go, maybe next weekend. Maybe next weekend I'll look at this because I don't know if I really wanted to get in that deep today. Oh wait, there's a deploy to Azure button, and so now I'm going to go ahead and try it. And I go, oh wow, this whole thing works.
Yeah. Now
I'll start tearing it apart. So.
And that's the idea, right? You want to get it to a point of working, so you can start to rip it apart and understand how it all behaves under the covers.
Yep, yeah, pretty cool stuff. So I mean, that was me beginning to early steps with Azure Active Directory, and there's a lot that I think we can do with good practices on authenticating your users, whether they're internal, they're in your AD, or they're external users that already have their own accounts with other social networking sites like Twitter, Facebook, Microsoft, Google accounts. Something like Azure B2C lets you consume those accounts too.
What I like about this, sure, it was a somewhat quick demo, and we didn't get into all the depth of the features. But, Active Directory is one of those things that, like, as a developer, Active Directory was always handled by in our case, like the infrastructure team or the ops team or whatever, right? And quite frankly, I thought, well, I can't create an Active Directory. Like, that was easy.
Yeah.
So now I'm going to go play with that, right? Because I really was surprised that it was that easy. I thought there was going to be more configuration or something like that. I guess it's like Active Directory as a service, or something like that. Like, it's just there. Unless maybe installing Active Directory or configuring it on an internal machine isn't that hard in the first place. Maybe it is. I don't know. I've never done Active Directory before.
Really?
I've never installed Active Directory.
I think about the old days of, okay, you're going to set up a Windows domain. So first, think about your strategy. And a primary controller and a backup controller and an AD forest. Sure. And I would just start to say, like, the IT guys have got it.
Yeah.
The IT crew has it. I'm just not going to worry about it anymore. And
for a lot of the apps that you wrote, you probably didn't. I spent part of my history was doing SharePoint work.
Yeah.
So you had the big beefy laptops with 32 gigs of RAM on it that you would set up your little farm essentially, or you had some other place where you'd set up your Active Directory, your SQL Server, and then your SharePoint server, and then have that all be part of the same domain. So didn't go to the level of primary direct domain controller, backup domain controller. It's like just a domain controller.
And
it's
now
very
I know
small.
why Rich did SharePoint stuff and why I couldn't bring myself to, because I didn't want to set up those VMs with the domain controllers, but that's what it was about, right? So you could do it right.
And that was how I knew a little bit of infrastructure, because of having to make sure that all those configurations happen together with the IPs and things like that. And I have since forgotten a lot of it, but but I mean, you could certainly go ahead and do that. Really, it wasn't that painful.
And Rich, you probably, I say this a lot, you probably know the answer to this, and I always put you on the spot.
I know.
But you were talking earlier about, you may have Active Directory already, synchronized to the cloud and stuff like that. I think it's a lot of organizations are already using Office 365.
Yeah.
So I think I'm right in saying that if you have Office 365, if your company's using that, you're probably already syncing your Active Directory.
Most likely,
Most likely,
I mean,
right?
That's pretty much they go hand in hand.
To generally do that. So you may be working in an organization and not even realize that you already have your Active Directory synced already to Azure.
Yeah.
And that might help you in some of these.
So talk to the folks who are managing your cloud and IT and say, hey, I want to do sign-in so much simpler. Can you do an app registration for me?
And they're going to be like, they don't know what that is.
Yeah, they're like, I don't know. Okay, well, open up the portal. I'll show you.
I usually do
Actually,
that. I'll show
watch
you.
the Dev Talk show. They did it.
Yeah,
They did it. They made it look really easy. I just need that client ID and that tenant ID.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I'm off and running.
Yeah. Oftentimes, yeah, it's if you're in Office 365, definitely you've got some kind of Azure AD presence up there. Where things get a little more complicated is you've got a company that's kind of merged and like, well, we have our tenant and you have their tenant, and you got to figure out how. That's a whole deeper discussion, but yeah, I mean, for the most part, there's something up there to support it.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, so that was Azure Active Directory. I never thought I would have done that. Like I agree with a lot of what you're saying. I was actually nervous about creating an Active Directory. Are you kidding me?
Seems like a big deal.
That's like that seems really tough. And then I said new. I said, oh, create. Oh, I just have to wait a minute or so. Oh wow, that's not so bad.
So much of this stuff though fits that category of going. Well, we don't do this. I don't think we've done this yet on the show. Like, I need a new VM. Boom, I got a new VM. I mean, it may take a minute to generate itself. I need a new instance of Azure Service Bus. Boom, I got it.
Mm-hmm.
Like things. Now, don't make it. I say it's easy. It's easy to get those things set up. Now, of course, you still need to know what you're doing with these kind of things. But just this getting started point is. It's amazing how easy some of these things are. It's great,
Definitely. And I think we didn't really walk through, well, we talked a little bit about the handshaking kind of thing. So when you signed in, you went out to that separate environment. So think of that. It's a service that everybody goes to authenticate for that tenant. All of those apps are going out to that same endpoint. Right. And that redirect URI basically knows where to send you back to for your web page. So you're able to take advantage of those services and have your app just focus on what it needs to do, which is pretty cool.
Under the covers, that was OAuth 2.
Yep.
An OAuth 2 endpoint that Microsoft provides.
Yep.
And it authenticates you and then returns back. And this is standard OAuth 2. So you could have done this whether you were authenticating with any of the major authentication providers.
Yep.
And then when it returns back to your redirect URL, it's going to bring along with it the just the information, the claims information, and now you get to act on it because now now I know. Now I really do trust that it's Andy.
Yeah.
I really do trust that it's Rich, instead of previously where, I mean, I actually, years ago at a 15 Minutes of Fame, I did a talk on how in your identity database, because we were all doing it, we were all doing an ASP.NET membership database of some kind, right?
Yeah.
Membership provider.
I don't necessarily want to dwell on membership because there were that went through a lot of iterations, but you stored usernames and passwords. And I did a 15 Minutes of Fame talk on please store passwords safely, hashes, salted hashes. And this was a little bit before we were stretching hashes. So, but this was a while ago, and it was saying, please don't put user passwords in the clear.
Yeah.
And then secondly, so then a lot of people in the audience assume they're going to show you encryption. No, we're not going to be able to reverse these. This was a new concept for a lot of developers at the time, is that I don't know your password. Right. And so we're teaching this stuff to developers because we want them to do this safely. And now today I get to say, forget it. Use a good identity provider, and you get to ignore all of it. Right. You let the experts handle it.
And it would be something to talk about in the future, again, and not only these things to look at, but if you have that username password database and you set up a B2C instance, you can bring those up in a one-time push up to the environment once you create it. But say, hey, this is your password as it currently exists. Your username passwords currently exist, but everybody's got to transition over to some kind of a different identity provider, so they get a chance to swap out. Yep. So they don't have to completely come in from scratch. They can keep some history of who they are.
One of the things I noticed in there is, and we didn't look at it tonight, is that demo user, I can reset that demo user's password. And what would happen is the next time they logged in, that whole interface would present to them hey, you know what, you got to change your password, and current password, new password, and that's all handled by the identity provider.
Right, and that's just, it goes back to what I was saying before. That's the kind of stuff that you rely on. Our service desk, they can reset people's passwords, right? But now it's in the Azure portal. Now, maybe not every developer gets access to those things. We restrict.
You might script it.
That's a thing that we also restrict certain access to. So we're not giving every developer permission to modify Active Directory, things like that.
Yeah,
so we may say, well, you need to ask, have someone else create this for you, but you see how easy it is, right?
Well, it's important to note that everything we did in the portal could have been done either with the PowerShell CLI, with the the Python CLI with API calls,
Mm-hmm.
so your organization can build a secure.
With the Python CLI?
Isn't the
CLI
V2
is
the
built
V
on-
the V2
yeah.
CLI is
Oh,
written
it's
in
built
Python,
on.
right?
Okay, I didn't realize what you
But
meant.
there's
Okay,
also
yeah.
PowerShell commands too.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Sure.
And
And
well,
ARM.
gosh, I mean, there's a million ways to talk to Azure.
Yeah.
You
And-
don't have to use the portal.
No, you don't.
Yeah.
And you can script it, you can call APIs. But to go on that point of, I don't need permissions to create accounts in Azure AD to do what Chris did on the app registration. So in our tenant.
But I think you used to. There was a time where I feel like that stuff got like blocked up, and somehow it got easier. Like they cleaned something up there.
It's certainly been that way for the last couple of years.
Oh, okay.
Where I could create app registrations, but I don't have any access to do anything inside of
Right.
the domain itself. as
Yeah,
far as
yeah,
users
yeah.
go.
That's great.
So it's definite segregation, because those are some of the things, not only for what we're showing here, but a related piece is what we do for Azure DevOps when we do pipelines, and we
Right.
basically tie to that subscription. It creates a similar kind of account called the service principal under the covers, but that which ultimately can be the same as an app registration, right? It just depends what you're using it for. So
It all ties together.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, what do we have? A couple
What else we
things,
got?
couple events coming up, and then maybe we'll call that a show.
yeah,
We talked a little bit earlier about this. I guess we could start with Philly.NET Code Camp because it's in October.
yeah.
Philly.NET Code Camp is always 2 days, and Friday are full day sessions. And here's what we have so far.
So he's already posted these.
Yeah, these are already going up, and then the Saturday grid is beginning. Now the call for speakers is still ongoing, so this is being filled in as we speak. But
You can get an idea what the day is going to be like. You know?
but
And I remember when I used to be involved with Philly Code Camp.
Mm-hmm.
We would sell out before the agenda even
Yes,
came out.
yep.
You know, it's one of those events that
before
you
the
can
call for
generally
speakers ended,
you can generally assume that you're going to just get a ton of great stuff.
Yeah.
You know, and the price is right.
Yeah.
That's for sure because it's free.
Yeah,
on
well,
Saturday.
Saturday's $20 now.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, he
and,
changed it.
and part of it is just because we do actually have a smaller space than we used to. In the past, we used to have 800, 1,000 seats, and now since we have less, we found that to reduce a lot of the no-shows and some of the other issues, a modest, I mean, trying to keep it. I think if it could be free, that would be wonderful, but it's helped. It's made a big. The number of no-shows went way down.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
just for even a small fee. You know, I know $20 isn't for everybody, and I think the fact of the matter is that if you really belonged here and you didn't have $20, that the organization would listen.
Sure, they would help
There's
you out.
no problem with that. Fridays are, you know, they've always been $76, and you need to get admission for Saturday.
Yeah.
And I mean, for some of these full day sessions, you would go to a full scale conference that you know, put on by a huge conference vendor and pay 4 digits to get into a pre-conference workshop. But there's another conference nearby that's not 4 digits.
Well, before we go,
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah.
Sorry, Rich.
That's
Click on
okay.
this.
So just to, I pasted in the chat window there, but basically there is the session eyes. So Bill is still looking for his
That's right.
speakers. He has a couple of openings for the workshop on Friday. So if you're interested in that, make it a workshop session. If you just make it a regular session, then that would be for the Saturday. And as you saw from Chris's screen there are a whole bunch of open spaces where we need some people to speak. And I think one of the things that we want to try and do is get more different people coming through to speak. So if you've never talked at one of these before, this would be a great opportunity.
Yeah.
As well as the 15 minutes of fame that we have coming up in a couple weeks, I think. And I'll drop that link in the session eyes here as well, so we have it, because there's also one to grab those. So we'll
put
see.
together a talk, you know, submit it.
15 minutes is,
15 minutes, but even Code Camp, you know, if you've got something you're working on, my advice to people, if they're thinking about that, sometimes they think, well, I don't know everything. Well, if you know more than the people in the room, like you don't want to skimp and pretend you have more expertise than you do or anything like that. But if you're a couple of days ahead, sometimes that's all you need on something that's a new topic, and you've said, well, I've been playing with this, it's brand new.
Yeah.
Then maybe Blazor, as an example, something that's so new that most people haven't tried it. If you've got a couple of weeks experience with it, you do know what you're talking about, and then of course it goes on from there. You can have various levels. The workshops, I've done them, you've done them. So to be honest, it is an awful lot of work to prepare them. but the reward is great. I loved doing the full day workshops, and I did 2 different ones. So I've probably done them like 5 times, I think, or maybe. And it's great. It's that opportunity to really go deep on the topics you want to talk about. Then in those 1-hour sessions, you don't always have time to go, and it's fun. It's exhausting though. It's a lot of work.
It's funny because we've talked about, you know, kind of some of those all day workshops are kind of what I do every day anyway.
Yeah.
So it's
for you,
it's almost like running the marathon at that point.
So when you're at an event like that, you know, thank those people that, I mean, sure, you paid $76 for the thing, but that's a pretty good deal. So, you know, be kind to those speakers at the workshops. Be kind to those speakers at the the regular Code Camp sessions. They work hard to put these things together. Say thanks to people when you see Tony walking down the hall and he's running all the food and stuff. Stop and say thanks to those guys, you know, or Bill or Rob or their wives that run that thing.
And it's a volunteer, you know, it's an all volunteer staff, you know, who come through and do those, and they're giving up their Fridays and Saturdays to come out and put on an awesome event for us. So, but we'll be here too.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
I don't think I'm going to speak, so I'm going to be available to just do this kind of stuff.
We'll just get you walking around with a mic and a camera.
That'd be fun. Yeah,
that would be pretty cool.
A webcam on like a helmet cam. We could do something like that. Yeah.
Code cam.
Code cam. Yeah. So,
all right,
I've got this on mine, or do you?
No, go ahead.
Yeah.
Either way.
Well, you know why I wanted to do this on mine? Because I wanted the opportunity to
I'm sorry.
draw.
Hang on, I'll switch up.
Oh, yeah.
You want to try drawing?
I do want to try drawing.
That's been fun. I mean, I found an excuse to draw a second ago, so it's
I think that's you, Andy.
Is this mine?
No, it's not.
No, it's not mine. It's still his.
Well, wait a minute. Sorry, I went the wrong.
So
this one. There you go.
So we can see we've got 68 days till Tech Bash. We've talked about Tech Bash before. I'm one of the organizers, and Chris is going to speak. Rich is doing a workshop. Here's Rich right here. Talk about. Oh, I got to enable this pen here. Doing more with serverless on Azure is a great workshop that Rich is putting together. We've got 4 great workshops. We've got a DevOps workshop. We try to find like a variety of content, you know, so we've got a DevOps workshop, a .NET Core workshop, right? This is taking your .NET apps and moving them to .NET Core, I believe is what he's talking about. We've got a couple guys that are really good. I'm going to get out of this pen thing because it really is kind of, it makes it hard to work with. These guys are talking about intro to web components, and we're really glad that they're coming along. So we got some, you know, some front end stuff. We've got all different things. The variety of speakers, you were talking about that earlier. We've got great speakers, right? Richard Taylor's been around for a long time, and a lot of us know him. Some of these are new to our group. Chris was there last year. I mean, I could just go through and you can just see like there's just all these great names and faces that a lot of people have heard of before. And you were talking about stuff like a good example. Well, we've got Jeff Fritz, of course, who's awesome. Oh, I can't spin that thing. What I was really excited about is someone that I don't know. Where is it? Stephen Cleary.
Yep.
Stephen Cleary is one of these guys that when you go on Stack Overflow and you're asking like a C# question.
Yep. Async and await.
Async and await. This guy really knows his stuff. He's one of those guys, and I've said this before, that when I'm in the room and they're talking about like, you know, language features, and I'm like, blah, 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 you know, I don't know what I'm talking. He's one of these guys that knows this stuff inside and out.
Yep.
You know,
I learned it from him. Async, await, and task.
Yeah.
I learned not just from his blog, but some MSDN, and here's a little bit of a sad obituary. MSDN magazine articles on the subject, and basically how to think about this stuff on a web server, which wasn't all that obvious, and maybe something we should talk about on the show. And he's going to be there. So, I mean, there's nobody better to learn
from. How do I
from.
not go to his session? Even on a topic I know, I'm going to his session. So, you know, you come here and you can see if you're making a decision, you can look at the session list, right? It's not a schedule, it's just a session list. And you can see the plethora of sessions.
Scott K's C#.
Scott K's great C#. You know, so here's a good example. Like on the last screen, those two were right next to each other.
Yep.
You've got Scott K, a local guy, really knows his stuff. We're thrilled to have him. You got Stephen Cleary, who I forget where he's from, maybe the Midwest or something like that.
Yeah.
And you know, but we've got people coming in from all over the place, right? Local experts and international experts. Here's a list, right? We've got all kinds of info. You can take a look at. You know what? We've added this photo gallery here. These are great pictures from last year. If you've never been there, you can get an idea what it's like. You know, we've got a news area now. This is kind of new for us. We didn't have this stuff in the past. And there's some places on here where you can find testimonials. And most importantly, you make that decision, you come down here. You can register today. And we have to take away this banner, early bird pricing, ended August 23rd. So we have an edit to make for our site there. You know, we hope you register. The bottom line is, what I say is, it's interesting when we talked about Code Camp, right? And the comparisons between some of these events. And, you know, some could say there's a competition between them, but we don't really see it that way, right? I'm just saying, you might think it is, but it's not. Code Camp is unbelievable. And I owe my career, I say, to things like or Philly Code Camp, right? It's just unbelievable. This is a different vibe, different event. Your company sends you out, hopefully, right? You spend 3-4 days off-site, immerse yourself in the content. You can do a 3-day conference plus lodging, and you're still under $1,000. It's just a great value. You're not going to find a value like that you're not flying to Vegas.
Yeah.
If you're within a certain radius, where most of the people that come to a conference like this do, they come from a driving distance, but not all. We got registrations from Texas.
Oh, nice.
I'm like, it's exciting to see, like, wow, people are flying cross country to come to our conference. It's really great.
Cool.
That's cool.
And I will say, my first time going to Tech Bash was last year.
Yeah.
And one of the things that made it very different for me in seeing it was it's a family conference.
Yeah.
Like you mentioned Vegas. You're not going to go take your family out to Vegas for the most part to go to a conference, but between the events that you had in the evenings, as well as just things to keep the kids, you know, entertained, and you could bring your kids with you and still get some really great content and knowledge while you're there.
Yeah.
So.
And on the same note there, it's worth mentioning, it's a 100,000 square foot indoor water park.
Yeah.
It's
so
amazing.
It's fun, right? The place is crazy, right? So I would say, if you're not sure, you know, sign up on our newsletter, which is right here on the site. Oh yeah, we're not on the page now.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay. You can sign up for our website. You'll get some information. At most once a week, we send out a newsletter, and you'll find out more about what's coming up for kids content, family content, all that kind of stuff. We'll be publicizing, and you can also go and look at some of last year's content, right, on YouTube / Tech Bash.
That's right.
And is that what it is?
Tech Bash Conf?
Tech Bash Conf, it might be. Let's find out. I have it in my YouTube. Let's go over here.
We're going to have to link to them on our YouTube channel.
YouTube, Philly.net, not that one. Whoop, YouTube. I'll just go there and then come over to the side. There's great content on the Philly.net one, and here is Tech Bash Dev Conference, but the URL, oh, I don't have it on here, but we do have a vanity URL, so I don't know why it says that. Let's see if it comes up under Tech Bash. I don't want to waste too much time on this. Nope. No. I don't know what that is. You know, you got to be careful, and I shouldn't just randomly go to things on YouTube.
Yeah.
I'm embarrassed that I don't recall what it is, but you can get some of the content up there and see what it was like last year.
Yeah. All right.
It's a good show.
So I wanted to close with one thing. So I'm trying every time I'm trying to think something that we're watching, and I watch this. I didn't watch this week. So when I say what we're watching, it's a little disingenuous. It's something that I remembered from the past year. So I have a YouTube video up. This is Joe Armstrong. We lost Joe Armstrong this year in April. He was the inventor of Erlang and was known for his work in fault-tolerant systems. It is said that the world's telecommunications systems use Erlang for its high performance and its ability to recover from what most of us would consider a crash, and somebody go restart the server. So he's really a dean of computer science, and it's a huge loss to computer science. But one of his last talks was a keynote that he gave for this conference in San Francisco, and it was called "The Forgotten Ideas in Computer Science." And he talks about a lot of the innovation that was written in papers and dissertations of the past decades, and maybe we should come back and look at some of these ideas. in some respects, you might say that Armstrong has been vindicated in recent years with the rise in popularity of concurrent programming and functional programming, and in a renewed interest in languages like Elixir, which is uses the Erlang VM. I may not be saying that correctly to say that it's the Erlang VM, but it certainly does use that environment, and Haskell and F#. So he's famous for a quote where he talks about what he considers the problem in object-oriented languages, and what he is famous for is the part in bold that says you wanted a banana, but what you got was a gorilla holding the banana in the entire jungle. When he talks about you instantiating some derived class and who knows what implicit state you got along with it. So I recommend watch this talk. Look, it goes over my head at many points. It's very technical. Talks about some ideas in computer science that I just didn't have the background to keep up with. But in the end, I think it's a loss to our community. We lost Joe Armstrong this year, so I thought that would be that I'd say that somebody that I didn't watch it this past week, but it is a video that I remembered watching that maybe you might want to check out too.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. I'm going to take a look at that. That sounds really pretty interesting.
I dropped a link to that in the chat window. So.
Excellent.
Yeah, awesome. So I think that's it here from the Microsoft MTC at Malvern. We had a good show, a lot of great stuff happening. .NET Core is this close to being official and released, and we will certainly be doing a lot of it here, including getting our website online so that you can all join us and watch the past episodes and see what's coming up. So the plan is to be here next Wednesday. So we'll see you again. So I just want to say thanks to everybody. Thanks to Rich for holding things down behind the camera, and thanks Andy for being here to talk to us about everything from DocFx to just our experience at work. So appreciate that.
Cool.
So for Rich and Andy, I'm Chris Gomez, and thank you for being with us on the Dev Talk Show.